Who elected you leader of this outfit?
All right, boy.
We got about 4 days to get to that treasure.
I find in why you give it a think.
They broadcast me out on the radio.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Cocktail Cinema, your weekly movie review podcast, where we pair craft cocktails with your favorite movies. As always, I am your first favorite bartender, third favorite author, Josh Price, and I am joined by my co-host, Greg. And
Hello,
our
what
producer,
up,
Shasti.
what up? I'm a man.
This week, we are returning to the catalog of the great Coen Brothers, and we're reviewing...
I'm with my company.
Oh, brother, where art thou? Let's get my proper notes here. This movie came out in 2000, earlier than I had realized. Again, written and directed and produced by the Coen Brothers.
And shot by who?
And shot by the great Roger Deakins.
Of course.
Budget of $26 million and a box office return of $72 million.
Should have been better.
Should have been better.
But it's good.
But, I mean, it's also had a very large following in the years since then.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, here we are 22 years later, and it's still talked about, still quoted, still very much in the zeitgeist.
Mainly because of I am a man. Everybody just loves the song, but it's
Those
a great
boys
movie.
and their soggy bottoms.
No, it's a great movie.
Yeah, and I mean, what was the last Coen Brothers movie we covered? Raising Arizona?
Yeah, Raising Arizona was for sure.
Yeah, and I think they're a pair that they don't necessarily put out a movie every year. You know, they're not a Michael Bay where they're putting out a giant film on a regular basis. But when they do put stuff out, it tends to be a banger.
Yeah.
You know, and they're not known for their adaptations. So this is also, you know, a unique position for them because they're kind of loosely adapting the Odyssey.
And they are and have become and grown into a household name as far as directors, producers. And how do you get two brothers to work together like this? You know what I mean? It's hard enough to... We have our own issues sometimes just by doing this show, you know, but to put two brothers together in a Jewish household, right? Yeah.
And
make
both
it work?
control freaks.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
in a good way.
Right.
But yeah. I think they probably develop a dynamic because everyone that works with them loves working with them.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, it's kind of like, I'm not comparing us to them by any means. I'm just saying like our workflow and how we are able to come across some of these movies and touch on so many different points and respect the other person's point.
Yeah.
When it's like not my strong suit, but it's Greg's strong suit. Or for writing aspect, it's Josh's strong suit. Where you probably know which is which, but one's more control of like the writing. Was it right?
Well, it's normally I would be able to tell, but they do kind of alternate quite a bit. One movie, one will be producing, and then the next movie he'll direct. They're both very involved in the writing, and
both of them for this movie, both of them,
both
I feel like they give each other the leeway.
Yeah,
yes.
Maybe not so much one takes over the roles more than the other. But
well, actually, for this one in particular, Joel's the director of this movie. You know what I mean? He's the only director listed on the card, and then they both share writing accolades, and then
an editing credit.
And Ethan takes over the producing on this one. So I mean. Yeah, that's what I was asking before. Kind of, they flip a coin, or how does that work out?
I think they alternate. Like it's what it looks like when you look at their track record.
you said Joel was the writing.
They both wrote, Ethan and Joel, and then Joel was the director, and then Ethan was a producer. Yeah,
so that's like what we love about the whole Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn.
Right, true.
They very clearly defined roles.
I think they're both. I think it's stupid for me to sum it up that easily because they're both super directors. You know what I mean? They can put on any hat, but I think the point I'm making is just them working together.
Yeah, and I think they know, like their upbringing was very classical, you could say, to where they're very clearly defined positions, and you know what you're doing. So when one's producing, he's producing, and he allows the other to direct. Yeah, and they do that with their cast as well. Like they don't take on very many ad libs. Yeah, but they do give their cast room to be like, all right, this is the kind of accent we want out of you. Right. Give me 20 of your best takes doing that.
Yeah.
And in this movie, Clooney killed it. I mean, I think he won a Golden Globe for this one for Best Actor. That silver-tongued devil, you know. I mean, he really the thought and the emotion that went into his character, impeccable. Nice work, Clooney.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's
jump it off right there.
Let's get into it there because this movie takes off in a very it kind of starts at the end of Cool Hand Luke, you could say. Like they're on a chain gang.
Yeah.
And they break away, run through that cornfield, and that's where I think Roger Deakins' influence is most readily seen. Like he's in my opinion, he is the best cinematographer that has ever graced film.
Yeah, and it shows through in this movie.
Yeah, so that opening scene where they'll run, then they'll drop down in the corn, then they pop back up. Like it's the way it's framed.
Yeah.
It gives you a scope of everything.
Yeah.
You can still see the chain gang. You can still see the bosses on their horses.
Yep.
You can see the sun behind them, and it just gives you a real sense of depth.
Yeah.
And
It's
a real
funny you
scope
brought
of
up
what's going
Cool
on.
Hand Luke, because the sheriff in this movie is based on, I forgot the name, but a character from Cool Hand Luke. So
Okay.
it's kind of funny you brought that up.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah. And this movie draws a whole
Interesting.
lot of
It draws from a lot of, you said a classical
yeah.
approach. It
Yes.
obviously draws from Homer's Odyssey, but the classical approach, when my ears kind of twinged a little bit when you said that, because like Sullivan's Travels.
Gulliver's Travels.
No,
Yep,
Sullivan's
yeah.
Travels.
Travels.
It was a movie from the 50s, black
Oh,
and white
okay.
movies.
48
It's
or
about a
something.
guy who was traveling across the country to produce a movie based off
Okay.
a book
Called
called
Oh
The Brother
Brother
Were
Out
Out
There, yeah.
Thou,
Yeah, you're
which
right.
is a 100% fictitious book.
Yeah.
So with everything that directly correlates to Greek mythology or biblical,
Yeah, total
aspects,
biblical, yeah.
right? Because it's sheriff, I'll talk about that a
Yeah.
little later.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
But it's like those are the direct correlations. But like Joel says, he's like, I forget the guy's name who made Sullivan's Travel the movie, but he's like, he wrote about this fictitious book called "Oh Brother Out Thou," and we wrote the story for him, kind of.
Yeah.
But it's like it's fake, so just
Yeah.
literally just taking the title
Right.
and taking the expedition,
Right.
the road trip
Yeah.
format, and
Expanding the meta.
tying exactly,
Yeah.
just changing the whole meta,
Yeah.
just completely.
Yeah.
Making it their own.
Yeah.
Buying in.
Well, and they're good at that. So you and I were talking, a few minutes ago about how so many of their movies are about nothing.
Yeah.
But there's a handful of their films that are very traditional story front to back. So like this, and I would say Hail Caesar are their most traditionally told stories. And it kind of shows their range because they step out of their comfort zone. This is one of, I think, only 2 adaptations they've done. The other was Lady Killers. They may have done one more, but I know it's very few.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're taking very well-defined story structure and working with it when normally their films are very amorphous and they just kind of develop on their own. This is point A to point B to point C, and it's executed masterfully.
Yeah, taking a lot of things into consideration. It's like
Everything.
they're so good at making their own lore and,
Yes.
and character
Yeah.
webs for a lot of
Well
these
put.
movies where it's funny. It's that tie between Greek mythology and like Revelation.
Biblical
Yeah,
symbolism.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's in my mind the best way to kind of spin.
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And then bring it into, Depression,
Depression
era.
Mississippi.
I mean, like there's a lot. They call back on so much stuff. Not only is it biblical and mythology, but they also like Babyface Nelson is in there.
Yeah,
Babyface
yeah.
Nelson is a real.
There's
bank
historical
robber.
figures here.
Tommy
yeah.
Johnson is Robert Johnson.
Robert
Yeah.
Johnson, but that shootout and stuff. We live in the burbs, Chicago burbs. Like so, Babyface Nelson was killed in Wilmette, which is not very far from here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to see that they bring in not only kind of post-prohibition, depression, biblical mythology, and spin it into this beautifully structured masterpiece. I mean, like,
Well, and it's understanding
do
your
that?
setting. Understanding your setting
Yeah.
down to its studs.
Yeah.
Knowing that the end of the Depression was a period of time where people were still very familiar with Greek and Latin terminology,
true.
and being deeply steeped in the Baptist South.
right, yeah.
So the Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God is still being circulated
Yeah.
like 150 years after it came out in this area
And
at
that-
this time.
Like that depression point too. It's like right before they say it in there somewhere, like Mississippi, like right before they were introduced to hydroelectricity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
yeah.
dealing with the dam and the flood and everything.
That's
That's there.
the
But
end of the
Clooney
movie, yeah.
is like dealing back to the Greek mythology, like the Roman Empire. Like that was like a technological period of time where they were so far advanced. Where George Clooney, with it being released in 2000,
Yeah.
it's like he's the modern man. He's the slick talking atheist. Who's more concerned
Dapper
about
Dan,
how
that
his
hair,
yeah.
when
I
he's
love it.
literally in between Robert Johnson talking about the devil, who is the sheriff.
Yeah.
Because he calls him out. He's like, he's as white as
he's
you.
white as you. And
his eyes sunk into his head.
And
He
the
walks
dog.
around with a mean old hound.
Yep.
Like, he's stuck literally between
Heaven and hell.
Usually you don't get the same stories of, you know, and it's an atheist is the main character, just in complete denial of both sides of this.
Yeah. And I'm going to answer my own question.
Yeah.
Have at it. I love when you do that.
When I asked you guys, how do you bring all these things into fruition? How do you make it shown through? You got a good score. You got great music.
Yeah.
And the music behind this film is flawless. And it's a T-Bone Burnett. He used to play with this. Everybody knows the song. He used to play with. He was an original guitar player for like Bob Dylan in the '70s.
Oh, okay.
And he's graced the stage with many of artists, and he still plays today. He's not a studio musician. He's not a film musician. He doesn't just do that. He's on stages playing blues. You know what I mean? It's cool, and it comes across really well, especially from that. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's how you tie it all together. Is you bring people to the music that truly touches them. I mean, it's everybody's muse. I mean, if you don't like music, come on. I know it sounds stupid, but that's how you bring it all together. That's how you tie it all together in this movie. You know, and it is completely tied together
with Deacons and with the soundtrack and with the great character arc and storyline dialogue is what I feel we've been missing lately. It's like this covers every aspect.
Well, and it's funny that this movie is so steeped in that turn of technology moment, because in the real world, this is also around the time where digital filmmaking started to really become a viable option. Right. Roger Deakins was known for being like, until I can make a movie better digitally than on actual film, I will film using film. Yeah, I'm going to use actual film. So during a period of time where Hollywood is advancing, Deakins is putting out bangers that are still printed on petroleum.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. And I think it shows through in one sequence in particular, that siren scene where they're kind of looking for their buddy, the golds on those trees shining, like you know what I mean? Like that's imprinted in my mind. Like
so that's another thing, like
color scheme.
Color scheme, right? And it's shot so well, it reminds like Ray. Like you're hot.
Yeah.
You're hot watching it. But here, check this out. Like you think you're just in a dark room with no lights. You're able to set up the light how you want for perfect lighting, and then you're building a set. So you do the motivation of lighting, which we always talk about. You just put a light outside of that window and say it's the moonlight. Where as soon as you step outside, right, like you're in nature. You're not building that set. Yeah. So it's like if this background looks good, but the sun's here, you're battling lens flares. Not only using like 5 to 7 different filters.
And some cinematographers will wait days, weeks.
But what I'm saying is like it's like you set up a shot and you have, you know how some scenes that we even shoot for what we do takes hours. This you're battling the sun where it starts and where it sets. It's one of those things like
window.
I could see them constantly having to change.
Yeah.
No, we need to go down, you know what I mean, a quarter mile down the stream to where it bends, and now the sun's not. Because you know how it is, like when the sun's setting, every 15 minutes it drops like a noticeable.
Well, on top of that, treating the film like, do you remember in Fight Club we talked about that resilvering process? Well, this is the opposite of that, where resilvering makes the dark colors more rich. What they accomplished with the filters and the post-production treatments is it pulls those vibrant greens and golds towards the eye.
Yeah, 100%.
And it does provide a little bit of depth both in color and perception. So this world, it feels lived in, but it also feels alive. So they're traveling down this dusty trail, but every tree they pass is another story they could have told. Every blade of grass is another scene they could have shot.
And it seems that way, perfectly put, because it seems like that's what they're doing the whole movie. As they're making this journey to, I guess in the Odyssey it'd be Ithaca or something, right?
Yeah.
From Troy. But there's no time. There's always a journey in every aspect, in every setting that they're in. There's always something that's happening, whether it's we thought you were a toad, you know, or you run across Big Dan who's clubbing you across the head, or, you know what I mean. There's so much to be told on every every sequence moves so well.
Yeah.
And like you talked about blade of grass and leaf and shots you was talking about the sun changing.
Yeah.
It's the timing, the parallel between the timing and the story. Second to none.
Well, the utilization of the world around them
Exactly.
gives this story a richness that it wouldn't necessarily have otherwise.
Yeah.
Because so when I first started having that book back there edited, one of the things people told me is like there's not enough characters in this story that don't show up again. I was like, well, what do you mean? It's very lean. Like, well, it feels like these are the only people who live here. And in this
you have to build your world.
Yeah, in this film, not only is the landscape alive and it feels like it's its own character, but we've got the shopkeeper.
Yeah.
We've got every single one of those prisoners. We've got all these people that exist in this world.
Nelson, the sheriff.
So it doesn't feel like this is the center of the
wife.
universe.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's... Yeah, I don't know.
And it's a major change from its source material.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah.
Odysseus is, for as powerful and strong as he is, he believes he is the center of the universe. He goes toe to toe with demigods.
Yeah.
And, you know, our Everett Ulysses feels the same way, but the world around him tells us different.
Yeah. And he's capable of taking that step back to, you know, with Pete and Delmar, you know, not a lot, not at first, especially the first half of the movie.
Well, he's got growth.
He's much
got
growth, and so does Pete and Everett. I mean, they're saved.
Yeah, right.
You know, right. I love that scene too. He just walks.
Get on in, the water's
man, it's
fine.
so good. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point because it's almost. Do you think they were trying to do that? Like,
yes,
you know, like intentionally, like they wanted to go against that grain of that loosely based Odyssey story that they were.
Yeah, because I mean, we're talking about. These guys have been making movies for almost 15 years at this point, and they are so familiar with every character they've ever put on screen that they understand the impetus behind each person's actions and the motivation there.
Right.
So I think recognizing that if they built a very shallow world, this would have come off the way that like the Big Lebowski does. Yeah. Which Big Lebowski is a wonderful film, but it's two-dimensional because there's nothing going on beyond what you see on screen.
Yeah, the rug's the main character.
Here, yeah, right. And here they have put this story inside a functional world. Yeah. And that's why this stands out from. That's one of many reasons why this stands out from even some of their own work.
Yeah, and even to add to that with John Goodman, you know, and the way they shot different characters, like creating this larger than life being, you know, as a Cyclops, you know, or Big Dan, you know, or whatever. Just the way they're able to shoot from the attention to detail, the way they're shooting, you know, from ground up, or you know, from creating depth of character size, you know, to make it play on those stories that we talked about, you know, to actually make them a character, not a person. And it's go ahead.
I was gonna say they use every camera trick in the book to accentuate Greg's point, which is like, you know, some of these other directors that we cover, like Say Wes, he's not doing he's not breaking the rules. He's just kind of setting up his famous either like perpendicular follow or like 90-degree pan with these extravagant sets where this is just like outside of like the pub at the last scene before they go back in and like get the redemption. It's something where it's like there's no depth. It's lackluster compared to those outdoor shots, but it's shot so perfectly that you're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when we're on Wild watching some of these other movies where like they're just using every camera trick in the book. Like I feel like Deacon's didn't. I feel like he just stays true to the fundamentals, and then like you said, he's just one-upping his own game.
Yeah.
The more time he's shooting film and doing these things, and it just is perfect.
Yeah. And the final scene where the water rushes in, because we talked about them, you know, going into creating dams and things like that. That final scene where the water's rushing in, and it's all over oh my, you know, the slow pace. But you know what I mean? And then the arc that Clooney has, and then every time.
Eventually being baptized against his will.
But then he goes back right after that and regresses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's
or digresses.
that's where the biblical and the theological comes in.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. It's like that point specifically, the flood coming in is like biblical, but it's in the theological sense.
Mythological.
Sorry,
You're good.
in the mythological sense, it's the Cyclops goes to Poseidon after the first time Odysseus and his crew leaves him or beats him and leaves him, and he gets Poseidon's help to use the sea to get them off their course.
Yeah.
So when they're about to get hung and they're saved, and it's like they're going to be eternal salvation. I almost think
first time you hear Clooney pray.
I'm just saying. I feel like that was Cyclops, Dan.
Yeah.
Breaking the dam, as if the Cyclops was asking Poseidon for help, and it's steering them off of their course, which was true redemption.
Totally,
like even though it saves them, and it's like that's Clooney getting baptized, and that continues the rest of the movie. I almost think like if it ended there, that's what they at least Everett and Pete, or Pete. I feel like that was
Pete and Delmar.
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right, and that's that clash between the mythological and the theological, where their salvation technically occurred halfway through the movie, and his theological salvation occurs here because it's the only time you see him pray, and it's a baptism, unwilling baptism.
And after it's done, he's like, I'm just kidding. That's all bullshit. You guys believe in dog shit.
and from the mythological side of things, it's just they tell that story out of order. Like if you look at Babyface as Pandora's box, he comes in like a whirlwind, he wrecks the car, and then they're stranded again.
Well, he's Hermes in the mythological sense,
far
like
as that goes.
the god of thieves.
Yeah, I mean,
it's loose.
Super loose.
I've just always seen him because he does come in with such whirlwind force, and he specifically crashes the car the way that the wind ripped the boat apart.
Yes.
But again, I think this is intentional.
Yeah.
I think the Coen Brothers are recognizing all the potential threads, and they're there.
From more than one angle.
Yeah,
it's
they are
wild.
there.
That's the
Just
true
do what you want
beauty
with
of
it.
this. It's like, how do they, like I said before,
It's like that perspective
How do you
art.
do that? How do you do that, man?
Yeah.
They're geniuses. This movie is a masterpiece.
That's what I'm saying. With how do you do that and tie all these angles together we're talking about? I know the Sullivan's Travel thing is no other than the name.
Yeah, right.
It's a fictitious. They're like, oh, this is just a fucking a culture,
it's a toy box
50s
to play in.
culture.
Yeah,
exactly. But I'm not gonna say it's another angle for writing or putting in characters, but I think that's interesting as fuck. Like, I didn't know that until doing research for this one.
Yeah, and I think this movie stands alone because of that.
Yeah,
I mean, there's not a whole lot of movies that add that much depth. For historical scenario after scenario after scenario, bind it together, and then not only do that, but have it be viewable, have it be watchable, and not only be watchable, make it something special where people want to see it time and time again. You know,
well, to make it something that make it
huge
an experience that you can sit with and just you can really soak in and dare I say sip on.
Yeah, right. There you go. Sippable.
So, for
those
of you catching on, that was me cutting Greg off. So today, I did a little bit of thinking about the setting that we're in with this end of the Depression era. We've done a lot of whiskey drinks, which is what you would normally turn to, that Prohibition era style drinking. Well, the other thing you could turn to is homemade wines. And what I brought to the table today, quite literally, was 19 Crimes 2018 Table Red Blend. Okay. It's their 2018 red wine.
We drink whiskey because we're men.
I am going to throw this to Greg, our resident
sommelier.
Walk us through the flavors we've got in this glass.
Right, let's see here.
Is it leggy?
No, don't worry about the legs. We don't have a wine glass.
I heard it was real leggy.
Oaky on the nose.
Okay.
Getting some blackberry.
You gotta smell through your mouth, dude. They say you
Tobacco.
gotta open your mouth when you do it.
All right. Much more oak. Much heavy blackberry. Heavy blackberry. This is very juicy. Super
juicy, but still not sweet. I appreciate that. I like a red wine that's very sturdy like that, very oaky.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of tobacco. It's the nose and mouthfeel are the same. You know, there's not a whole lot of, in my opinion, a whole lot of depth.
Mm-hmm. But it's a table wine, and for a table wine, that's impressive.
I think a hint of vanilla in there, just very subtle. Right at
yeah,
the
coming off the
front of
blackberry
the
there,
tongue.
yeah, for sure.
I just taste wine.
It's
Something
I mean,
else. It's very drinkable.
yeah, I really enjoy the 19 Crimes line. Like I think this is the third time I've brought something of theirs to the table.
Yeah. And then you did
There-
Godfather with one.
There was there was a fourth one because we used their Snoop Dogg rosé
Right.
in one of our drinks recently. But yeah,
It's definitely very drinkable. It's not overly dry.
yeah, and they're very affordable.
Yeah.
Like, even picked up this bottle in Cook County.
Yeah.
And even then, it was less than $20.
Yeah.
You know,
All right,
I think I paid $14.
That's
for
Cook
that
County,
bottle, so-
Chicago, Illinois,
Yeah.
which is we get taxed hard.
So the taxes
We're on the
were pretty
dividing
heavy.
line.
But
For
know,
all of
this
you
is-
in Amsterdam,
other,
and-
yeah, to our friends in Iceland.
We're
etc.
free healthcare. We love you.
But yeah, I definitely recommend pretty much everything I've had by
yeah,
19 Crimes.
it's all been decent. Yeah.
So, pulling it back in, with this blood of Christ in our glass, let's carry it on down to the river and talk about Delmar's salvation.
All right.
So, in my opinion, I think the reason Delmar is the first to walk into the river is he is the most easily swayed. Like he's their lovable idiot.
Yep.
But that's also the part of him that makes him both genius and endearing.
And there's the parts where Totoro and Clooney get into it about who's going to lead the ship. Delmar doesn't want any part of that shit. He wants to go home. He wants to get home, and he wants to. They'd say what they're going to do with the treasure when they get it. I forgot what Delmar says. I think it was something silly.
Yeah.
About just having a farm,
very
buying back the
simple.
farm,
It's very
and
simple.
Totoro said
Well,
something
that's when
about
he's gonna like court a woman again. He's like,
yeah, oh yeah,
get the family farm back.
yeah. And then Totoro said he wants to be a maitre d', wear tux every day. You know, I mean, it's simple. It's a simple life, and it's really cool. But yeah, bringing it back to what you're saying about his baptism, he dives in. He like cuts everybody in line. Like hell yeah, let's go into the river choir.
Straight to
Having everlasting is my reward.
yeah.
And then come on in, the water's fine. And then Totoro's right in after him. It's cool. I mean, these are our lovable idiots. They're basically just sticking true to the story. Almost that service life is what they've accustomed to. And I think it was important for them. I think it's something that they never had, they never witnessed. It was a big scene too. I mean, that scene is pretty iconic when all the people are kind of dressed in white.
It's very Lord of the Rings. Like,
yeah, kind of
like the
they're
elves
like, what
walking
the
through
hell
the
is
forest.
going on here? They're like, we're just chilling on some money. We have Babyface left, and we got a bunch of money. We're chilling.
Right.
We're gonna get some treasure, and
Yeah.
all these people are coming in there just singing a nice song. And
Well, and this is one of those points where
it's a huge turning point.
the mythology and the theology both kind of line up because we have this profession of faith, as you'd say in the good book, and then the immediate test of faith with the sirens, and the only one who fails his test of faith is Pete, and he is. For all practical purposes, you can see it as either kidnapped by the devil or turned into a horny toad.
Yeah.
And both,
she was a toad.
I think both readings can be true.
Treasure.
That's my favorite part in the whole movie is that movie theater scene.
And he's
Do not seek the treasure.
Tim Blake Nelson whispering by throwing his tongue out of his mouth as far as it'll go.
It's so good.
Greg said yesterday, he's like, sometimes I wake up like middle of the night. It's like not like being like tossed out of a nightmare. He just like remembers a line like that. From,
Yeah, dude, it's the
Do
best.
not sing it. He just starts laughing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that, like I said, I hold on to those
Those
one-liners.
one-liners, yeah. And there's a lot
much
of
so.
them in this
Yeah.
movie. There's
Yeah. If Clooney
Geological
didn't-
oddity.
Yeah,
3
if-
weeks
if
from everywhere.
If Clooney didn't talk so fast, I'm sure there's a whole lot of gold in there. But you know,
Oh, he's got some good ones.
No, I
like
know.
he drops zingers on Pete and Delmar constantly.
Yep.
I mean, that's the whole quip or whatever of the South, like especially at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was all idioms.
Yep.
It was all
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's that bless your heart mindset. You're still cutting people to the quick.
Yeah, but he's
you're
also
doing
not
it
as
in a
smart as
way
he
that-
leads on.
Yeah.
He has this thing in his head where the faster you talk, the smarter you sound.
That's
That's
main
why he got
point they're
busted.
trying- yeah.
exactly.
That's the main point they're trying to push. It's
Yeah.
like he's like the new man, the
Yeah,
atheist,
yeah.
the technological, the fast talker, the
Yep.
GQ guy.
Oh, I'm a dapper damn man.
dapper damn man.
I love it though.
Well,
His
and
obsession. That's how they're
Yo, pal,
they're,
mate.
they're literally tracking him by his hair nets in his Dapper Dan canisters. Like,
Yeah.
like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
It's the vanity.
Yeah, right. The devil.
I'd like to point out, so a little inside baseball for the audience. Like, we recorded obviously this episode and then Life Aquatic on the same night. In both of these movies, our arrogant older hero character loses a fight with one punch.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's just this trope that stands up with really, like, obviously Life Aquatic, we talked about that before, but here, this trope holds up as the perfect crystallization of who Everett is.
Yep.
Where he talks a big game, he thinks he's strong, he thinks he's smart, but he is really neither of those things.
Yep. When he just eats a punch, and
Yeah.
goes down real quick.
Like can't
In front of
see
his
straight. Yeah, can't see straight, can't talk, can't walk.
Yep.
That's the thing. Is like the only good thing he did is like when they bust Pete out.
Yeah.
After the
Yeah.
do not seek the treasure, and he tells him there's no treasure, and he's like, "You should have left me in there."
Yeah.
He's
I was
like-
I had 9 days till I'm free.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna do another
They
30.
attack 30. Like, I won't get out till I'm
95
84 years old. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
Dude, Turturro kills it too, man.
He
Just, I
does.
mean, everybody in this movie just shits on their performance. I mean, in a good way. You know, they shred it.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Well, and talk about, we talk about transformative performances. I think the last time we saw him at this table was Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And DeJesus is a completely different
Right.
kind of character.
Right.
So being able to
Yep.
effectively pull off two iconic roles for the same director within, what?
We got to
5,
remember.
6
you
years
remember
of each
there's
other?
two,
Yeah.
there's two directors. And
Well,
when-
yeah.
when-
Yeah.
when-
There's one.
No, I'm saying one's
Oh, it could've been
producing.
another one.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know
It
what
could have
I'm
been
saying?
for the same
It
team.
could've
You know
been
what I'm
Ethan.
saying?
Same
For as
team.
much as
Yeah.
we joked at the beginning, like
Right.
us three not being blooded, all the shit we like hardships we have,
Yeah.
and them to be like being able to like beat the shit out of each other, like that. It's like it adds more respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's impressive that they are able to pull those kinds of performances out of people to where they do have a lot of repeat customers.
And
Like,
not only the
George
main
Clooney
character.
comes back, Torturo
Right.
comes
Right.
back.
And they pull these performances out of like co-stars and not even co-stars, but just minimal appearances. You know what I mean? They create that larger than life scenario on every they get the best out of every one of their actors. They're
but
geniuses.
They get the best out of the people. Like we
'Cause they-
did that one sip where it was like actors that you don't realize are
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
Stephen Root is the radio DJ.
Yeah.
He's Homer essentially.
yeah, the author.
He's the Oz.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? He's telling the story from the radio standpoint at that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the loose translation of him being Homer. But I mean, like Dodgeball in Office Space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like
Stapler.
you get into
The Stapler
No
dude.
Country, and then it's like Nemo, and he's Dale, not Dale, Bill from King of the Hill.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the guy with the fat dude with tank
Yeah, he's
top.
been in
But I
everything.
mean, he's literally like one of those dudes, voice wise. Like, dude, Rango, Nemo,
Yep.
Bill. It's
Yeah, and he gives a hell of a performance too. I mean, even though he's just in there for a few minutes, but like just being a blind,
he kills
blind
it. Like
junkie.
you just
It's a
compare his
very
short
believable,
role,
yeah.
not
Yeah.
even knowing it's Homer,
Yeah.
or like that impact that it's supposed to have.
Yeah, and it's a
It
one
doesn't have it-
some tiny little brick and mortar spot with an
Right,
antenna.
But
You
think
know, like
about,
that
think
just
about
to the
his
word.
role being that little guy in all these movies.
Yeah.
Like, forget that voice acting shit.
No, I know what you mean.
Just a little role in,
Yeah.
in Dodgeball or Office Space. It's like still the biggest role you kind of like. He's a
Yeah.
different. He's such a different character in every movie,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is like
You said Josh
It-
talked
it-
about
it-
Torturo
it
as well.
speaks to his skill.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And I think one of the things that the Coen brothers, like they've gone on record and saying like they like to make their characters the Looney Tunes. And it's much more noticeable in
Describe your
like,
nipples.
I did. Someone's got to. I'm sorry, folks. It's a family show. There we go. Like, it's much more noticeable in, like, Raising Arizona, where Nick Cage is very clearly Woody Woodpecker.
I love that baby.
Things changed. Yeah. In this movie,
I didn't
it's
realize that
much
was a
more
thing until you said that to me earlier.
cartoonish than Looney Tunes,
Yeah.
but it's still that over-the-top, cartoonish, end-of-the-world, bonker situation is very much on display here.
Yeah, and it's not only the movie is kind of going to that spot, but every situation seems to be the end of the world for these guys because they're seeking this treasure to set them free, and they're just following this blind dumb asshole, and it just
They change rock and roll.
Everything.
They rob a bank.
They linger on everything he says. You said blade of grass changes the way that they think, the progress they're making. They linger on every aspect, which is kind of the beauty of it all. I think when we're talking, we've talked a lot about mythology and theology, and this kind of stuff. And I think that's maybe another part of the theme that was kind of maybe drawn in is just kind of realizing the beauty that you have around you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and not putting all your faith into one box and one bucket. You know, it's don't put all your eggs in one basket, pretty much, and don't. There's so much to be drawn from this movie. I've said before, I think this movie is a masterpiece all its own.
I agree, and I mean, let's be real here. Like the Odyssey, the source material for this, is one of the oldest road trip stories we have. Like this and the Epic of Gilgamesh are just buddy road trip stories, and to take something that is iconic in its own right and that developed a genre all its own and transform it to a point where it's incomparable to anything else, that speaks to the power of this entire team.
Yeah.
Like, yes, the Coen Brothers are the driving force behind it, but
and
credit needs to be given to guys like Deeks and the cast and you know, every boom operator and best boy
for sure, and also T-Bone Burnett. I mean, like with that song.
Yes.
I mean, like the song is it drilled home. It's literally I am a man. Yes, that song. Definitely, it just drills it home for you.
Yeah.
I mean, it leaves you with something lasting, not only in your mind but audibly. You know, you're singing a song after you watch the movie.
Yeah,
like before we started doing this episode, literally for 4 hours.
Stop singing.
It's like it's so it just brings it all into more fruition. Where it's like it's the head, the tongue, the heart. You know what I mean? It's kind of that trinity. You know, that beautiful essence that we're trying to get across here the whole time.
We talked. Since you brought up doing Life Aquatic, you know what I mean? It was the thing where, like, great actors, and it was just not they underperformed, but
it was lackluster in that sense,
based on how everything was set up, and it was just extravagant sets and angles that kind of distract you from that. Where this, you're just the great camera angles and sets sink you in even further to these great characters, like.
And the rule of 3 comes in a million times over this movie.
And 2 2/3.
Yeah.
Like if it's us 3 1/3 or us 2 1/3 of the frame, they're spacing out the other side with something.
A beautiful tree or sunlight just ever so gently showing
like
through.
The Greek statue.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
When they meet.
Right.
When they
and
meet
the Greek pillars that were there, the big white pillars.
It's because if you set up 2 people perfectly in there. And the thirds, known as that power. But if you kind of like skew that towards you, more towards the center, and balance out the bare side with something like a mythological statue, it's in my mind that's just as good as the beyond extravagant sets and the shit that makes you kind of forget that.
Yeah, it goes beyond set building and it's world building at that point. Like we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
the only way you can describe this movie is it's a world. It's a world. It's an adventure.
Yeah,
it's world building and breaking down, and it's
growth and disgrowth and encouragement and
the boys going on a road trip.
Yeah, right. With kick-ass music.
Right. What a soundtrack. But I do think it's probably time to hop on over to what are we gonna call them today? Sour grapes. See what their rating was.
Sour potatoes.
All right. So we have a critic score of 78%, an audience score of 89%. As always, my good friend Greg, is this an overpour or an underpour?
This is an underpour. This movie, in my opinion, is one of, dare I say, one of the best of our era, in my opinion. There's so much growth. Like we talked about this crap. I'm not going to go over everything we spoke about, but I mean, to bring everything in that we've talked about from so many different storylines, make it their own, bring out the best of their characters, have a kick-ass musical accompaniment, great camera company all. Deacons, you know what I mean? This movie is way underpoured for me. I would give this movie a 91.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
91.
Greg hasn't given anything a 90 in a while. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I was going to ask if we're going to under overpour for tomato or audience score, but I was like, fuck
Tomato.
it.
Yeah.
I'm giving it a 90, so they're both
both
underpoured in my opinion. Yeah. I think that like I said with Wes Anderson, there's some movies I might think are better executed on certain angles, right? But I think this rounds about everything. And where I kind of overlook storytelling, like I really pay attention to casting and dialogue. But when all these different angles of like your classic road trip story are thrown out, it's like perfect in my mind.
Yeah. I obviously they underpoured this. Like this was a tragic underpour. I'm gonna give this an 87.
Cool.
I don't think it's one of the greatest 100 ever, which is why it doesn't crack my top 10% there. But I do think it's again one of the best films that's been made in our time.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the greatest road trip movies that's been made probably in the last 50 years. And there's really nothing to nitpick about this. Like I know it seems like we're fanboying over Roger Deakins and just jerking off the Coen Brothers.
Yeah,
but beyond
for
that,
good reason,
they've earned that. With just even if we're just looking at this movie, they've earned that praise. I think.
I guess just to give me one more. Just it cracked my 90s for the simple fact there's so much to grab onto after you walk away from this movie thinking about it, like weeks.
Fair.
I mean, everybody knows
Totally
the
fair.
song. Everybody knows the feeling you get. You know what I mean? That's
so
why it cracks my 100. You
it
know
was
what I
so
mean?
yesterday when I've seen this movie a million times.
Yeah.
Where I'm telling Greg like, no, there's obvious biblical, mythological, and then historical.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they don't overlap, which like it might take you a million times watching it. It was like Babyface. I like started looking it up. I'm like, Hermes is the god of thieves, and he helps them escape a portion and he shoots cattle.
Yeah.
Like now the fucking Tommy gun.
Sacrificing
Not the
the cattle.
livestock.
That shit is good. It's at the end.
That's why he gets killed.
Yeah, right. And that's funny that the cow's following at the end of his hanging or whatever.
Oh god, there's
so much to grab
many
onto.
threads that come back.
That's why I get cracked my 100. So that definitely gets.
No, I
puts me in
can
the 90s.
respect it. I can respect it. It
That's
doesn't
the fun
crack
part
mine,
about
but I see
watching
why.
movies for us.
Yeah.
Oh, ever changing too, but
Yeah, and
what's going on, Josh?
audience, watchers, listeners, jump down to them comments.
Click, click.
Give us your rating. Was this an overpour or underpour? Why do you believe that?
Have we all just been cluned?
Yes.
Have we all been
Just
cluned?
Clued.
I don't remember anything except lotus flowers and pomade.
I have a raging clue.
All right.
Great movie.
All right. I need to hurry this up before everything
Come on,
derails. All right. Run down to the comments. Give us your rating. Let us know what movies we should be watching next. And tell us why you agree with us, because we are absolutely right.
100.
Remember, I am pretentious. I may not be wearing the shirt, but I'm still that way. All right. Hop on over to the Patreon. Y'all know the deal. This is the internet. We're all friends here, except for those of us that aren't. And before Greg throws dynamite underneath these railroad tracks and takes out the orphanage, Greg, Shasti, I gotta say goodbye.
Hot damn, son! I believe you did sell your soul to the devil.